Let's do it! Okay, fantastic. Hi, my name is Brandon Ryan.
My name is Peggy Gannon.
And we are doing video answers to questions about soft click of a switch.
Yes, we are.
So if you've seen the play, you'll know what we're talking about. If not,
screw you.
Honestly. So the first question comes from
Joe Zavadil.
Joe Zavadil, who
Wants
saw
to know.
the show opening night, wants to know exactly this.
What the fuck is up with the ending?
What the fuck was up with the ending?
Good question, Joe.
Fantastic.
I'm glad you asked.
Thank you. Thank you. Where are you looking at, by the way?
I'm looking at you, mostly.
Okay, interesting. I don't know where to look at. Okay, cool.
What does it look like when I'm looking at you?
It looks good. Looks real good.
What are you looking at right now?
I'm looking at you.
Okay.
Looking at me.
Okay.
Love it.
That's good then.
Focus. So, the ending, for as you guys know who have seen the show, Ed punches a hole through the wall, which Ed and Earl then proceed to go through. A light comes to the wall, and they proceed to go through the wall, and then the play is over. Opera music swells, and the play happens to be over. Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful image. It was amazing.
It was a beautiful image. It is the part of the play, though, that kind of takes a left turn at Albuquerque, mm-hmm. and you kind of have to decide what that moment is about, because the rest of the play is...
The rest of the play is very, very grounded in realism.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. A little turned up to 11, but
yeah,
but
no,
pretty much
heightened,
naturalism.
Heightened reality.
Mm-hmm. So the end. It's a great question, Joe Zavadil, because that's what Brandon carried around the script for a long time and couldn't quite crack the ending.
Could not quite crack the ending until I gave it to Peggy Gannon about 2 years after I had it. And
which is about 2 years ago.
And she came up with a solution that seemed very satisfactory to both of us.
Not even satisfactory. It
actually seemed to make sense. It just brought the play into focus for me and it just made sense to her. So it was a revolutionary thing.
So I read the play, and it occurred to me that at the very end, in the last scene, when Ed is taking pictures of the two of them and the bomb, that one of those camera flashes, it was clear to me that by the end of the play they were dead. And my thought was then somewhere in that scene with the camera flashes, that one of the flashes was a simulated also explosion, so that the bomb, maybe the bomb that they were fixing on the table right then had exploded, and then they exploded and died with it.
Which harkens back to an earlier scene where we actually first see Ed and Earl explode a photo mat, and that would sort of symbolize a very similar thing where that explosion represents this little tiny baby flash of an explosion, which would be representational of a bomb possibly going off.
So it was clear to me that they were dead at the end, and that was the main thing. And so I brought that to Brandon, and that totally made sense to you. Mm-hmm. And then actually when Mark Fullerton auditioned for the show, so that's my water, he asked to meet with us, gross, and asked that very same question, what the fuck is up with the end? And I told him this, and he seemed to buy it. He seemed to think that that was really plausible and kind of cool, and so we went with it.
And that's what we based our going forth with on the show.
And then when we started rehearsals, we were in that concept, and we kept going, and we kept going, and it just...
And it stopped making sense.
Yeah, it just wasn't clicking. And we're about a week away from tech at this point, and it just was so clear to me when I originally had the flash, no pun intended, that I hadn't really re-examined it. And until Mark Fullerton in rehearsal was just like, basically asked in so many words that same question again.
Hey, what's going on with the ending of our show?
What the fuck
I don't know
are
what
we
it
gonna
means
do?
right now.
So it was a great question, and we had a great conversation about it. And what we came up with was a new framework for the show.
Which is something that started making sense to me throughout the very first day of rehearsal. Little bits of information throughout the show kept clicking into place differently for me, and it occurred to me, which I brought up to everyone, which we all kind of went forward with, was that
maybe they're dead from the beginning.
That they are dead the entire time, and that everything we see is... We associate with kind of like a Groundhog's Day scenario, where they're continuously going through this continuous loop until something very specific happens, which enables them to succeed and move forward.
So Bill Murray in Groundhog Day had to learn one particular lesson, and then the day stopped repeating. So that's kind of, we were going with the Groundhog Day kind of time travel loop.
So nothing that the audience can really see. I mean, it's slightly indicated throughout. So I mean, it's just two of us in the entire show. The only interaction we have with other people is voices being talked at us, so we don't interact with anyone. And so it just felt like and everything was all gloomy, and just it felt like a limbo purgatory sort of situation. that there's just these two gentlemen going through this journey together until something happens that enables them to pass on into another worldly heaven, if you will.
And so something happened toward the end of the play that allowed them to finally cross over rather than have to repeat this again. And that's, of course, why the audience gets to see this version rather than one of the versions where they just have to go back to the beginning. This wasn't really a concept necessarily that I intended most or even all or even most audience members to perceive necessarily, but it allowed a framework for the play to exist within so that we could tell the story that we wanted to tell. It made things fall into place. Mm-hmm. And I would say in that last week, it really heightened stakes for you guys, I think.
Which is
stakes and backstory in some ways.
Which is funny because it's nothing our characters even know about. It's not like a world that the character knows that we're going through these things. It's like, it all feels kind of deja vu-y and sort of like just hazy. And
so that's where we went with it, although I am definitely the first to say that part of Carter W. Lewis's genius in writing the script, I think, is that, some playwrights try to kind of director-proof their plays or actor-proof their plays. He doesn't really give any clues. He just writes it, and he's like, well, whatever. So I am the first to admit that another team could have taken this play.
Obvious clues. I mean, stuff that made sense to me only because we've read the script dozens and dozens of times.
Yeah, but it doesn't necessarily mean it was the right answer.
Yeah, it doesn't mean the right answer at all, but it made sense to me.
Yeah, not necessarily the only right answer. But it totally made sense to us as a team, and we went with it, and that is
what happened there, Joey Jojo.
So so that the idea of them crossing through the wall into the neighboring apartment was them crossing into the next plane of existence, going further in, and leaving this plane of existence.
So there you go. If you have any other questions, please send them to Brandon Ryan and Peggy Gannon of Map Theater. Thank you for listening and seeing our show.
Okay, do your weird finger again.
It's going to stop the recording. It's really terrifying, and